Hello and welcome to the GBNO Show. I am Dr. Rob Jones. This is episode 7. I'm here with my awesome wife,
Shannon.
She's a dietitian. I'm the chiro/physical guy. I help you get better, not older, from the outside in, and Shannon helps with
the inside out.
So today we're going to talk about all things sleep. For me, because I'm the outside in guy, we're going to talk about muscle recovery, joint recovery, body recovery, as far as how you function through joint manifestations and muscle manifestations of strength and health and wellness from sleep recovery. Shannon's going to be talking about.
Well, sleep is very foundational. I mean, it's truly our restorative phase, and you can't live without it. So I'm going to talk more cellular, more inside, disease prevention, etc.
Okay. And then at the end, we're going to have some hacks for you guys, which, what do you call them again? Hacks something?
Hack stacks, but we're really going to talk, the solution a lot of the time is improving sleep hygiene. And we're going to definitely give some good recommendations on improving your sleep hygiene, evaluating your sleep hygiene. And then for this particular episode, for those who have joined our GBNO community, there will be a document in nutrition resources on, sleep hygiene in general.
Okay, awesome. And for those of you just tuning in for the first time, the GBNO Show is about getting better, not older. We're both in our 50s. We're both experts in our field. We have a combined 50 years of clinical experience. Why listen to us? Because we're clinicians. We've worked with patients. Shannon in the clinical world of dietetics, me in the world of chiropractic and muscle injury, joint injury, and high-level athletics. So we're not just some fly-by-night influencers who look good with our shirts off. We actually have clinical knowledge to help you from the outside in and the inside out. So without further ado, let's get to it. So basically, sleep recommendations. We don't get near enough, right?
There's a lot of science, obviously, in this area. And you can actually get too much and it's detrimental, but definitely too little, I think, is more of our societal issue presently. So anywhere between 7 and 9 is ideal. And clearly there are, the exception, but that is the general rule.
Right. Yeah. Some people will say, well, I get 5 hours a night and I feel great. Well, you may feel great temporarily, but in the long run, your body can't repair in the way it needs to in 5 hours. We need 7 to 9 hours. Some people are great at 7. Some people are great at 9. My pocket personally is 7 to 8, and I feel really good. Any less than 7, and I just feel a little wonky the next day. My energy is always good because of, being healthy and eating right and exercising, but I feel like I'm a little less sharp when I actually don't get my full 7 hours, and that plays out in a lot of data. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the studies and really some of the ways we need to recover with regard to sleep. But one of them specifically that really stood out to me, I learned years ago when I was working in Division I athletics, and that was performance in high-level athletics with regard to lack of sleep. Studies were done on athletes with regard to power, strength, speed, endurance, interpretation of information that an athlete needs coming in, reaction time. All of that was significantly decreased, and in some studies even as high as 60% decrease in all of those functions with only knocking out like an hour of their sleep. So you take a high-performing athlete and you give them 7 to 8 hours, and then you knock that down to 5.5 to 6, you see a lot of those drops. That's significant.
Yeah.
If you've got a power athlete like that's a football player and they're trying to protect their quarterback and they've lost 20, 30, 40, 50% of their power, which doesn't sound like a lot, maybe, you've got 40% reserves. Well, that may be a difference between your quarterback getting laid out and losing a game, or if you're a tennis player, not perceiving the ball with depth perception. So these are huge, important things. Now, not just for athletics, but for everyday people, okay? if you exercise even moderately, when you wake up in the morning, the next day after exercise, for me, it's the next day. For some people, for you, it's 48 hours afterwards.
Yeah, usually
it's called,
2 days.
Yeah, it's called delayed onset muscle soreness. So let's say I do a bunch of arm work, okay, and I really work my arms hard. I leave the gym, they're all nice and pumped up. That soreness that you feel the next day when you go to extend your arms out, that's actually muscle tearing. You've literally made micro tears in the muscle. Now, this is a good thing because the way the body heals is you have satellite cell activation through a little bit of controlled inflammation. And those satellite cells basically tell proteins to come back into the muscle and repair. And that's what actually creates hypertrophy, which is the word for bigger muscle. Hypertrophy basically just means your muscle is growing in size. Now, you need ample recovery for that hypertrophy. So if you have a really hard workout and then you only sleep 3 or 4 hours for the next couple of nights, you're minimizing your hypertrophy response significantly. And if that comes down to, a possibility of, at our age, having a tendon-related injury, or if you're the type of person who has a manual labor job, like you're digging ditches or you're working construction, and then you go to the gym, God bless you for having a physical job and going to the gym. That's really intense. But if you don't have ample recovery, your risk of injury on the job goes up significantly because you actually haven't recovered. There was an interesting study done up in Canada about 10 years ago, and what they did, they took police officers and firefighters, and they took the fittest of the fit. So that was one cohort group. Then they took the moderately fit, so the fittest of the fit being guys and girls who are jacked, ripped, did a ton of CrossFit, could do 30 pull-ups, squat hundreds of pounds. So that's like the fittest of the fit. Then they took the moderately fit, like, people who maybe did 3 days of cardio a week and then lifted a little bit of weights. And then they took the people who were just not exercisers at all. Mm-hmm. Take a guess at who the most often injured were.
I have no idea.
Take a guess. You got three choices.
Probably the high-end athlete.
Yeah, the fittest of the fit were the most likely to be injured because firefighters, cops, they kind of have physical jobs, right? They sit around a lot in their cars, and then all of a sudden they got to chase a bad guy. They got to jump out of the car and run out, okay? Firefighter, sleeping in the middle of the night. I used to have a ton of patients that were firefighters, back when we had the old practice in Kansas. And these guys would tell me they'd be fast asleep, middle of the night. And they literally, when the bell rang, they had to be out of bed, dressed in their gear, and in the truck in less than 2.5 minutes. I think it was 2.5 to 3 minutes. So they're not getting ample sleep. Yeah. So what's happening is all the reparative and restorative processes that should be happening when you sleep, like I said, that protein synthesis, the repair, that gets interrupted. Yeah. So now you're asking a muscle that basically, let's say compare it to like a cut on your arm, okay? That scab hasn't had time to form fully. You pick the scab off, it's going to bleed again. Crude analogy, but that's kind of the same idea, is you're not allowing your body to go through that full function. So it's a hindrance, okay? Then we get into joint repair. So people who have even moderate or mild arthritis, research shows that if you don't get ample sleep, your cortisol levels rise. When your cortisol levels rise, you get a higher amount of inflammation. Guess what arthritis is, folks? Arth means joint, itis means inflammation. That's inflammation of the joint. Just for general interest, tendinitis is inflammation of the tendon. Appendicitis is inflammation of the appendix. I'm sure you get it at this point. So if you have arthritis, you have inflammation of the joint. So if you're not getting enough sleep, those reparative processes are not happening while you sleep. So your arthritis is going to get worse because you have an increased amount of inflammation. So this is huge. Now, why are we not getting enough sleep? Well, we're watching too much TV at night. We've got blue lights. I can't tell you how many patients over the years have told me they fall asleep with their iPad on their chest and they're watching shows.
Yeah, and we're going to get to all the sleep hygiene later.
Right,
for sure.
But all of that it's a stimulation of the pineal gland in the brain, which is waking the brain up when we should be telling the brain to shut everything down. Because I'm still treating a lot of athletes, younger and older, elite and weekend warrior, I always talk to them about sleep. A lot of times, especially the younger athletes that are looking to strive to get to the next level where it's college or pro, It's train, 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 train. And I always say to them, do what your body gives you, okay? If you've not had a very good night's sleep and you're dragging it at school or you're dragging it at work and you know you've got to work out that night, probably not the best idea to go to the gym and just tear it up, okay? Because you're not going to be as sharp. Like we talked about before, the studies show your power is going to be down, your endurance is going to be down, your flexibility is going to be down, so you're at more risk of an injury now. So usually what I'll tell those athletes is the days you don't sleep great, use that as a recovery day. Still go to the gym, but maybe just do some light, moderate cardio. Just chill. Just go on the bike and just ride the bike for 20 minutes. Don't try to crush a bunch of intervals, or go do a mobility day. Roll out with a foam roller, go to our website and get some of my mobility moves and just go stretch with some bands. You're better off doing that than trying to push your body through a situation where it's only firing on 4 out of its 6 cylinders and you've got potential for injury, basically. Absolutely. We're going to talk about sleep habits later and sleep hygiene, but a lot of the younger generation that I treat, these young athletes that are in high school, they're working out in the morning before school, they're taking a weights class at school, they're doing practice, then they have homework, and then they go to the gym on their own, and then they're sleeping for 6 hours. And some of the stuff these kids do at the high school level, the pros don't even do this much. They do 2-a-days in the off season, but during the week they practice, and then they have a day off, and then they have walkthroughs, like football, season. They do walkthroughs the day before, so they have a recovery day, so they're not banging their bodies before a big game. So we've got to teach our younger generations that sleep is as important as training.
Food and water.
As food and water and the training. Because to them it's the training. It's how much can you lift, how fast can you run.
But that's a finite part of their life, whereas we're really kind of talking to the 50 plus.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, we've got people who are going to watch this and listen to it that have children.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're in the prime age to have teenage kids. So I want them to message this to the kids because I want to see less kids orthopedically hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, for people who are our age, yeah, same thing. You have to have sleep hygiene because our performance goes down X percentage every decade. Wish it wouldn't, but it does. So if you're not recovered from a workout, maybe not a good idea to go out and, play in a tennis tournament that weekend because you're at risk for further injury. Or if you're going to play in a tennis tournament, rest the day before, go to bed early. So it's actually common sense if you think about it.
But here's the thing, and you know this about me as a clinician, and a few of our coaching people will know this, that if we get to the point and I am evaluating their sleep, we stop there until we resolve that. Because there are so many metabolic issues that come from lack of sleep. However, no one is prioritizing its importance. It is something that is always the part that gives. You know what I mean? Like sleep is where they're taking away from versus there's just so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's become epidemic, and we know that. Our society functions, especially in the United States, and I would say that other cultures are not always that way, but because we just go, more, fit more in, we are getting less sleep than ever before.
Yeah.
Then we've got the addition of all the screens, and we're going to talk about how that relates to feeding the issue of poor sleep habits. So it's a true problem for everybody. And like you said, if we have that 40 plus, 50 plus, you've got kids, grandkids, whatever, that this information would be applicable to.
Yeah. I had a great professor way back in the early 90s when I was in undergrad, and he was talking about sleep back then. And he was one of the first ones to talk about how back when we were hunter-gatherers and we didn't have artificial light, we woke up with the sun and we wound down for the evening when the sun went down, and then fires were our primary source of light.
Yeah.
Right? So there's kind of a movement now for people to wear red glasses, right, in the evening, because I don't know what the photons are. I'm not smart enough to know all that stuff, but something with the red glasses basically mimics that firelight, correct? And basically, it's supposed to help get your brain into the gearing to get you ready for sleep.
And we're definitely going to give, I always say when people know better, they do better, but we're actually going to give the reasons why that is when we talk about sleep hygiene.
Well, let's talk about it.
Well, let's finish off from the outside. Anything else that you want to talk about that's important as far as muscle, joint, anything in that area?
So one important thing, and this is what I tell all my patients, most people over the age of 30, over the age of 40, will wake up at some point in their life and go, my neck is all jacked up or my back hurts. I must have slept wrong. Unless you slept contorted because your toddler was in bed with you, sleeping perpendicular to you and your wife.
Or animals.
Or
I
animals.
hear a lot of animal stories.
Okay, I know you love your animals. We don't have any because of allergies, but I love dogs, and but don't let them sleep in your bed, okay? Because
a lot of people do.
A lot of people do. It's like sleeping with your toddler, okay? A lot of people think we were mean when it came to our kids, but we never let our kids sleep in our bed unless they were sick. If we were worried about them choking or throwing up or they had a high fever, we'd let them come to bed with us. We know through our friends and other people, a lot of people let their kids sleep with them. Well, I'm not a psychologist, okay, so I'm not going to give you the ins and outs of that, but I know it's not good. Number one, because kids need to learn how to kind of be self-sustaining in their own beds at night, not dependent on you, but also nobody sleeps well. Well, the kids will sleep well, but you won't as a parent. You're going to wake up tired, you're going to wake up with a kink in your neck, but I'm digressing on that. Okay, so my point to mentioning that was most people that wake up in the morning go, my shoulder's stiff, my neck is stiff, I slept wrong, and you didn't have a toddler in bed with you. It wasn't what you did at night. It was what you did the day prior that you didn't mitigate before you went to bed, okay? I tell all my patients that tell me they do this big, long stretch routine in the morning, I always say, that's fine, okay? But if you have something to work out and you tend to feel tight or you've used an area a lot that day, take 2 to 3 to 4 minutes right before you go to bed and stretch right before you go to bed, okay? We have that little mini foam roller in our bedroom. Invariably, one of us is on that before we go to bed, just kind of opening up the thoracic spine. There's a couple of moves I do for my glutes. There's a move I do for my thoracic spine. I'm usually coming into the bedroom from the closet, holding my arms open this way to stretch my chest out. By doing these basic foundational stretches before you go to bed, you're taking that tightness from the day and you're not allowing it to snowball into the next day. You'll wake up feeling way better. Now, if you're a morning yoga person or you like a morning yoga routine, go for it. That's fine. I'm not. You know what I'm like in the morning. I'm like a bear coming out of hibernation. It is not pretty. And basically, I have to do that work before I go to bed because I'll never do it in the morning. But here's the thing. If you do it before you go to bed, a couple of things happen. Static stretching, okay, where you just like hold a muscle and hold it, that's static. Dynamic stretching is movement-based stretching, like doing arm circles before you play tennis or hip airplane. Or static stretching before you go to bed is a great thing because it's a central nervous system depressant, okay? It tells your brain, hey, time to chill. That's why we don't recommend static stretching before athletics anymore. If you're getting ready to go for a run, folks, don't do static stretching. Static stretching will shut the system off. You want to dynamically stretch, meaning movement-based stretching. So if you watch any of my Instagram posts, do a hip airplane before you go to run, or do arm circles, or grab a band before you play tennis. That's dynamic stretching. Basically, research has shown in the last probably 15, even more 20 years, that static-based stretching tells the brain to tell the peripheral nervous system, which is your extremities, shut down, let's go to bed. So a perfect time to do it is right before you go to bed. Okay. It will relax you. It's not going to amp you up. I'm not saying get all sweaty before you go to bed because you don't want to exercise within about 3.5 hours of bedtime. I'm talking some very basic stretches, 3-4 moves max, 2 to 3 minutes, jump in bed, read a book, go to sleep.
There we go.
There we go. And that is going to help you, A, repair like we talked about before, but also get those tight tendons. Maybe you've been sitting, and maybe you didn't work out, okay, but maybe you just sat at a computer all day and your tendons were super tight in your shoulder, and then you wake up in the morning and go, oh man, my shoulder's and I slept.
Or the neck is the big
Yeah,
one. Because
oh,
of
my
the
neck
computers.
is so tight. Okay, but before you go to bed, do some neck retractions. Okay, do some neck retractions with extensions. Get on a foam roller. Okay, we've got all those things in the program, but if you do a little bit of work before you go to bed, you're going to wake up feeling a million times better, and then you're going to allow your body to do what it needs to do to recover.
Okay.
So that's probably one of the most important points, because I know we don't have a lot of high-level athletes watching this. We have just weekend warriors and such, and people who want to get better, not older. But the lack of performance, the lack of strength, the lack of power, the lack of depth perception, it's important for tennis players. Okay.
Well, and I think I'm probably going to get into a lot of stuff that's applicable to people who are aging.
Yeah.
And even though I think it's important to understand that even though you might go, gosh, I'm just not sleeping well, or I'm not sleeping as well as I used to, or whatever, your body's not always going to signal that something is wrong. And then chronic sleep deprivation can lead into major health issues.
Absolutely.
So it's not one of those things that we get, overt signaling that things are going wrong. So it's just good to understand that you need to prioritize sleep. And if it is something in your life that you're not doing now, and you're saying, well, my life is such that I'm only getting about 4 to 5 to 6 hours every night, I hope what you hear today will convince you that that is literally taking years off your life by doing that.
Yeah, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, yeah, you will, but you'll probably die sooner.
Yeah.
And your
it's known.
and your quality of life.
Mortality is increased with lack of sleep, so especially chronic.
So let me say one more thing, sorry to interrupt you, about the before you go to bed. If you're really tense before you go to bed and you're not relaxed, it's going to be harder to fall asleep, okay? If you can do some of the stretching, try to shut your mind off and just breathe into the stretches, you're going to go to sleep so much more relaxed. It's not just going to mitigate that pain in the morning. You're going to fall asleep easier, and you're going to stay asleep better. So
that's right.
It's my last.
Because pain, a lot of the times we know pain, temperature. If you have an animal in the bed, and I am telling you, a large percentage of my patients sleep with animals, and a large majority of them attribute their wakefulness to the animal. And that you just have to understand that that is affecting your health negatively.
Yeah, because you go to work in the morning, and guess what? Rover stays home and sleeps on the couch all day.
All day.
Okay. So even though their dogs aren't nocturnal, and I guess cats are to a certain degree, but yeah, well, they're jacking around, at night and kind of keeping you up and doing whatever. You're going to work and they are snoozing and recovering. Well, you're not. So I'm not saying they're not important. I know you love them, but hug them, kiss them, give them lots of attention. I love dogs, but just make them sleep on the ground beside you.
There we go.
Or in a kennel.
All right, so let's get into some of the inside, I don't even know how to say it, just the cellular level type stuff, metabolic stuff that happens, and then let's get into some sleep hygiene.
Let's do it.
Okay, the most important job that sleep has is, like I said before, it's restorative. So you have got cellular repair and recovery. So if you have had anything in your day that has created oxidative stress, you need that time to reverse that. So let's talk a little bit about oxidative stress. If you cut an apple in half, we've given this example before, but in case somebody hasn't heard this, you do not want oxidative stress. Oxidative stress eventually, chronically, will turn into chronic disease. So if you cut an apple in half, your apple will be nice and pretty to begin with, and then as it sits out in the oxygen, it becomes oxidized. That's exactly what's happening to your cells.
Well, it gets brown. The apple kind of browns up. That's the oxygen exposing to the tissue.
That's right. So you have to imagine that's your visual to what's happening to your cells when there is what we call oxidative stress. So what causes that? It can be toxins in your food or in the products that you use, or you were walking outside and a car drove by with the carbon monoxide. that our bodies are subjected to a lot of what we call free radicals, which in turn into oxidative stress in your body. So we need a system to reverse that. A lot of that is done through good nutrition, through all of our plant chemicals, but there is a process when you go to bed at night in the restorative phase that helps with that cellular recovery, getting rid, like if your C-reactive protein is high or your...
for people who don't know, what's C-reactive protein?
It's just a lab value that is commonly measured, and if that C-reactive protein is high, that is indicative of high inflammation.
Which usually is associated with the heart, correct?
It can be systemic. It is not just related to the heart.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other thing are cytokines. And you know, this is probably relating more to muscle, but that's another thing. Just like Rob said, we need that restorative phase to help with any inflammatory process that had happened at a muscular level. Okay. So then there's the detoxification. Again, same thing. And then we have growth. I mean, there's a lot of human growth hormone and things. Again, all of this is important to maintain our health. It's almost like your sleep is giving you that, let me just wipe your slate clean, reverse anything that wasn't great the day before so we can move into the next day with a clean slate, if that makes sense. The next thing is cognitive. And you mentioned this for the athlete, but I mean, this is no doubt very important for just the day-to-day. Clearly, there are stages when your children are little that it's just impossible, especially for a mom who is maybe nursing or, you know, it's just the way it is. But your memory is affected, your learning is affected, your emotional health is affected. We see higher rates of depression and anxiety in people who are not sleeping well. It can exacerbate mental health issues for sure. And then we get into chronic sleep deprivation, getting into chronic degenerative brain health, which is the Alzheimer's and dementia and that route. So it's very serious, although I don't see a whole lot of people taking their sleep seriously, truly. Because typically people don't want to spend a whole lot of time with me on correcting their sleep. It's one of those things that people just don't prioritize. And when they start to think, well, I need to exercise and I need to eat properly, sleep and hydration should be right there with that.
So aren't there studies, though, that show that the less sleep you get, the higher chance you have of keeping fat on you and becoming obese?
Well, that is what I was getting into next, is it causes hormonal imbalance, and predominantly cortisol and insulin are the two. And that then correlates into disease, which is diabetes and obesity. I will tell you, obviously I'm an obesity expert and a weight management expert. So it probably makes a lot of sense why, if somebody's not sleeping, that's where I stop. Because there are so many studies that show for people who are not good sleepers, and definitely for people who suffer from sleep apnea, are known to, your body is going to stop doing everything it needs to do to function on a normal level metabolically if you've lacked sleep, because your body is constantly trying to compensate for that. So you're going to crave carbohydrates 30% more the next day because your body is trying to increase serotonin levels and dopamine levels to give you energy and give you cravings, and you know what I mean? Like, it's trying to find, I didn't get good sleep, so I'm going to try to find energy elsewhere.
Gotcha.
Okay. So then the other thing is insulin. When your insulin is elevated, or let's say you're suffering from insulin resistance from a perpetually high insulin level, you are storing fat instead of using and burning fat. And that clearly is an issue when it comes to obesity and diabetes. So it can cause major hormonal issues. And honestly, if somebody is not sleeping, we don't move on from there, because it doesn't matter what I do with them. Your body's going to trump you when it comes to sleep. It will do anything it has to compensate for not getting that sleep.
So you said earlier that your patients don't want to talk with you about sleep. They want to talk about weight. So when you say to them, okay, well, you want to talk about weight, but if you don't sleep properly, you're never going to lose the weight. Does that make them kind of perk up and go, oh, I guess I better listen?
Yeah, and it's also cortisol levels, right? We all know, because we've been through this before, when your cortisol levels are high, metabolically, you're conserving energy because you've got to be able to kill whatever it is that's put you at risk.
Okay, a little break from the podcast here. Let's get to some questions from some watchers/listeners. So Shannon, is it possible to reverse insulin resistance?
Absolutely. So that is just a metabolic condition that is very lifestyle based. In most instances, it is absolutely reversible and fixable with proper lifestyle.
Okay, so better exercise.
Yep.
Better diet.
That's it.
What a shocker. So weird. Exercise and diet makes you better.
And if you want help reversing insulin resistance, my protocol would be fabulous for that.
Love it.
Okay.
All right.
All right. You, Dr. Rob.
Me.
What are your favorite core exercises?
Yes. Okay, so this is probably going to not be a popular answer because people are going to go, well, that's not a core exercise. My number one core exercise is the squat. And I'll tell you why. Whether you're squatting with your body weight, a kettlebell goblet squat, or a back squat, or a front squat, you are bracing your core, if you're doing it properly, as you're going up and down, and you should be holding that brace through the entirety of the exercise. So you're dynamically bracing your core against the downward force. It's a great core exercise. Now, for a true core exercise, like where you're on the ground doing stuff, I would say the half side bridge. Okay, so you're on your side. I've got it all over my page and it's in our program. You're on your side, you're lifting up with your hip, and then you can rotate forward a little bit. So you're getting your glute medius, but you're bracing your core at the same time. The glute medius is a major forgotten muscle with regard to pelvic stability, which ties into lower back and core stability. So that's number two. Number three would probably be the Pallof press, where you take a band or a cable and you walk out to the side, and there's a lot of tension trying to pull you back this way. So you go in and out, or you do figure eights. But that is one of the best rotation, anti-rotation movements, because you work your core while you're standing. It's going to help your feet contact the ground, and it's going to help your glutes even. So those are my top three. Okay,
Great.
One more for you.
Okay.
Shannon, should I be skipping breakfast if I want to lose weight?
Not necessarily. It's definitely not something that you have to do to lose weight. This is all about what works best for you. There are plenty of people who enjoy and like the way they feel skipping breakfast. There's a lot of people who aren't hungry for breakfast. I always just say it's important what you do for your first meal of the day as far as how you balance your meal, but it's not one of those things that's going to make or break the day. When you do have that first meal, it is important as to how you balance with proper protein and good fat, and really minimize your carbohydrate, because that will change the way your body responds throughout the day to carbohydrate, which makes a difference into cravings and appetite, etc. But I don't think breakfast is necessary. It used to be eat breakfast metabolically because that's better for you, and I honestly don't think the data is really there anymore. I think it's more about what works best for you, and then focusing on that first meal of the day being properly balanced.
So person to person. So I'm willing to bet this person asked because of all the intermittent fasting questions. And from what I understand in the data, intermittent fasting is really more about your metabolic health and what we talked about in the podcast, cellular health, and not so much about losing weight.
That's right. And I mean, what happens with intermittent fasting is typically you are missing a meal in there, which in turn means you are decreasing your caloric intake, but not necessarily. If when you do eat in that window and you're just absolutely grazing the entire time, or huge meals, or eating horrible stuff that's calorically dense, then that's not always the case. Yeah. Why do my joints make noises when I move them around?
Good question. So this is what I tell all my patients. joint noise in the absence of pain is nothing to worry about. It's a normal process of aging. Your joints are going to break down a little bit. The surfaces aren't going to be a little smooth, so they get a little bit rough and they can rub on each other. That's number one. Number two is you may have a tendon that snaps over what's called a bony prominence. Number three is you could have little air bubbles in the joint, like when you crack your knuckles like that, and that could be being released. As long as there's no pain associated with the noise, it's nothing to worry about. Totally normal process. I can't sneak up on anybody because of my ankles and knees. Now, if you have sharp pain associated with said noise, go see somebody. Maybe
like you?
Like me.
All right, that's it for today. Let's get back to the podcast. Should we go through this again, this whole cortisol?
Well, just go really quick.
Yeah, so, I mean, cortisol is supposed to be raised to give you that fight or flight energy source and stress, anxiety to get the heck out of there. It's not meant to be caused because of lack of sleep. And when your cortisol is high, you are not metabolizing, you're not burning, you're not doing what you normally should be doing because your body thinks it should be getting ready to kill the prey that you're running after, kill the prey that you're running after or running from, whatever it is. That's just kind of how we were built. So that's a long way of explaining that I always believe people, when they know better, they do better. And that is why in my protocol, I do an entire video on sleep and how to correct it and give them the data on you are going to eat 30% more the next day. You are going to gain weight if you're sleeping poorly. You are not going to be able to sleep or to lose weight, if you're not sleeping. It's kind of one of those things that people I don't think realize.
Right.
Okay. So then one more thing that I'll touch on before we get into sleep hygiene, because we need to talk to everybody, how do we fix this, is immune function. And this is a big one. You have to have sleep to properly arm your immune system so that it can handle whatever you're going to give it day to day. And chronic lack of sleep is known to put your immune system at risk.
Right.
Have anything to add for that?
Well, yeah, back when I was in school, remember I used to go through those crazy exam blocks?
Yeah.
When we were living apart, I was studying in Canada, you were living in the States, and we were doing 3-week exam blocks at Christmas, and then 2-week exam blocks in March, and then another 3 weeks in May. It was hell on earth. But I would basically stay up all night and study, write the exam, sleep a little bit, and then repeat that for 3 weeks. It was awful, but, gave me some knowledge. But anyways, remember when I'd come down and visit afterwards, I'd always be sick afterwards.
Yep.
Because I wasn't sleeping. I was maybe sleeping an hour or two a night for almost a month. And what Shannon was talking about earlier about your body cleaning up the cells is technically called autophagy. If you have a cell that isn't functioning right, your brain and whatever else that controls kind of the cellular breakdown, it's going to send another cell in and go, hey, this cell is in bad shape. Let's get rid of it because it's not going to function properly. So I think it's called autophagocytosis. It basically ingests that cell and then a new cell is created that is healthier. So when you're sleep deprived, that process cannot happen with your immune function. So now instead of having an army this big of immune cells, you've got an army this big of immune cells.
And fighting infection and inflammation, that's an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So now a tiny little load of virus, basically it's called viral load when you get like a cold virus or something. If somebody coughs right in your face and they're infected, you're going to get a heavy viral load. That's basically going to make you sick, okay? But if somebody's getting over a cold and they cough at you and you get a little bit of a little viral load, generally if your immune system's in good shape, you can fight that off and you're not going to show any symptoms. But if your immune function is low, that viral load is actually going to need to be not very big and you're going to get sick from it.
Yeah,
so,
which was exactly why, of course, flying, you were going to get sick.
Yeah, absolutely. So add that in. So sleep deprived, I'm not eating right, I'm not working out because I'm just trying to survive my way through exams, and get on a plane, the germ tube, come down to see you, decreased immune function, get something in the airport or on the plane, always get sick.
Yeah.
It was just textbook.
All right, so let's
But she was
move
worth it.
on to, clearly, because we're married. Let's move on to sleep hygiene.
Okay.
So what is sleep hygiene? Sleep hygiene is how you live and function that affects your sleep. What the hygiene part of it is, evaluate what you're currently doing, and the hygiene is meant to say, let's clean up some bad habits so that you can sleep better. So let's talk about how the way we typically live in our current lifestyle differs from really how we were meant to live. And this goes back to whether they were in the cave or they were farmers who didn't have electricity, and clearly they managed their day based on the sun. And this truly is how we set our circadian rhythm. You want to explain circadian rhythm simply?
Yeah, simply put, it's the rhythm, it's the wake sleep cycle rhythm that's in your body. Okay, so you could be living somewhere where there's no light. You could be in a cave in the middle of the forest somewhere, and you could know nothing about time. You have no idea what time it is, but your body is naturally going to know when to go to sleep because it's going to get dark, and then it's going to know when to wake up because it's light. Typically, with a good circadian rhythm, you start to get tired later in the day as the light starts to go down. But the problem with modern society is we've got all these lights on, right up until bedtime. So your brain is not recognizing the signals that it's like, hey, it's time to start secreting melatonin so we can start going to sleep.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about more why that is physiologically. Let's talk about, let's say, a farmer. Farmer wakes up, the roosters wake them up, the sun starts to wake them up. So what happens? Well, they went from where it was dark and it's starting to get light. So there is a gland at the back of your brain, which they say, but it's not technically true, behind the eye.
The third eye, yeah.
That detects light. And when that pineal gland that he calls it, Canadian, and I don't. So that tells your body when to secrete melatonin and when not to secrete melatonin. Everybody, I think, pretty much knows that you need melatonin on board to sleep. Okay, so when the sun is rising, your melatonin levels go down. Then at night, when they came in from the farm, they would have a big meal. It'd start to get dark. They'd start to get tired. They'd light the candles. That very dim lighting would be and so their body starts to secrete melatonin throughout the night to where then they're ready for bed. How do we live now? Bright lights, an alarm clock that shoots our cortisol level up first thing in the morning, bright lights all day long into the evening. People aren't getting outside. People aren't calming down in the evening. They're certainly not turning their lights down. That pineal gland still thinks it's time to stay awake. It's not time for me to secrete melatonin yet.
Well, yeah, we're watching huge screen TVs until right before we go to bed. And
people are on their devices in bed, and that, what they call blue light, is stimulating the pineal gland as well.
Yep.
And so it is causing literally an epidemic of poor sleep.
Yep.
The way we are living is causing major sleep issues for everybody. And it's very interesting when I work with my patients on sleep hygiene, they're like, wow, I never knew how negatively everything that I was doing was affecting my sleep. So it makes a difference. You've got to get in tune with your physiology. You've got to get in tune with your circadian rhythm. So what do I recommend? I recommend that people, as soon as their day starts, maybe take your cup of coffee and go outside. Go for maybe a 10-minute walk while the sun is rising. That cues your circadian rhythm, time for wakefulness. You will be way more alert during the day if you do something like that.
There's research that actually shows too, make you happier.
That's right.
Yeah, you'll be in a better mood. People go outside and you don't stare at the sun, but you just, without sunglasses, you let sunlight come into your eyes, It's shown to reduce anxiety. It's shown to increase the hormones that make you happy, less stressed. So all in all, it's just better for you.
Then go outside midday. Show your body, even though you've been in this artificial light all day, that it is still wakefulness time. Get a little vitamin D. Go for a 10-minute walk after lunch, which is great metabolically anyway.
Yeah. And don't slather yourself up with sunscreen unless you're hyper sensitive.
Or have skin cancer.
Or have skin cancer. Talk to your dermatologist about that. But if you're moderately skin toned, walking in the sun for 15 minutes at lunch, getting some sun on your face and arms, you're not going to get skin cancer from that. Okay, we actually need that. There's studies that actually show that if you expose your skin, you actually increase melanin production, which is the stuff in your skin that gives you a little bit of color. Obviously, people who are African American or truly African, they have a high melanin count because they're closer to the sun. So their sun exposure was great. So their skin needed to be darker to protect the skin. Okay, we need a little bit of that so we can actually protect our skin. So you'll actually do good for your skin by getting a little sun exposure.
I think we're doing okay.
Yeah, we live in Florida, so it's a little easier. But the idea
But we did get our skin checked.
Yeah, it's good. But I think there's too much alarmism, like slather yourself up with sunscreen before you go outside. So by getting the sun on you, that's how we're going to synthesize vitamin D, which is so important in the body. So it's not only going to be good for your immune system and many other things, it's going to help you stay awake and maybe prevent that afternoon after lunch, like, oh God, I'm going to fall asleep because it's 2:00. And
that's right. And that's why you want to get out and look at the sun, quickly look at it, let your body know, hey, not time to start secreting, melatonin yet.
Yeah.
Then you get home in the evening, and I really recommend that everybody, as it nears that the sun is going down, get back outside. Watch the sun set. You don't have to be on a beach like we do, but just watch this. Go for a little 10-minute walk after dinner and watch the sun set. It is known to help your body know, oh, it's time to start secreting melatonin. Then the last thing you want to do is come back in the house and bright lights everywhere, TVs on, music, kids on devices. You want to start taking it down. Turn, like we've talked about before, these red light bulbs that people are getting mimic the firelight or the candle light that our ancestors grew up with.
Yeah.
And it helps your body know it's time to start secreting that melatonin. If you don't want to put red light bulbs and everything, just put a dimmer light bulb in or turn it on the lowest setting. Turn down the lights and let your body realize that it's time to start resting.
Yeah.
I also recommend people not be on electronics 2 hours before bed. And I have a lot of pushback on that.
Yeah.
And so I highly recommend people get blue block glasses if they're going to extend closer to when you want to be lights out, meaning sleeping. You need to have allowed your pineal gland a couple of hours to really secrete the amount of melatonin that you need to feel like you're tired.
Yeah.
People are reading with like book lights, and that book light is like shining right into their eyes, which is stimulating their pineal gland. They're maybe reading on an iPad that is a bright light, or a lot of people have a bad habit of flipping through their phones in bed. Not only should we store the phones away from us, one, because people are getting woken up all night with all the notifications and stuff. I just don't understand why people, it's one thing. We have a child away at college, and one of our phones needs to be close enough that if she needed something that we could hear it. However, everything else is shut off. And you have, these are smartphones for a reason. There's ways to program it so it does that. But you really shouldn't be having phones close to you with the radioactive, what do they call that? REF?
Yeah.
EMF.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic field that is emanating close to you at sleep. That's going to reverse all that restorative stuff.
Yeah.
So get your phones out of the room. I recommend, you can tell I've talked about this a lot, I recommend everybody start a process of going back in their bathrooms. That's where they plug their phone in. Have a dimmer switch on your light in the bathroom. Put it on the lowest while you're brushing your teeth. All of that stuff that you're doing, signal to your body, I'm ready for bed. Then you go to bed. Very dim lights next to the bed. Make sure the light is behind your head and not right in your eyes. And read fiction. And I say fiction on purpose because it is known that if you can't turn your mind off at night, and I know a lot of people are like that, where they're solving the world's problems when their head hits the pillow or worrying about all the stuff they have to do the next day, I recommend you have a list next to the bed, get things off your mind right then, and then push it away. Then get out a fiction book. Why? Because self-help is not going to do you any good, or some biography that's going to upset you or something. Like, make sure that it's something that can help you relax, get your mind off the day, and literally read until your eyes are fluttering, and turn out the light and go to bed.
Yeah, for me, it's about 15 seconds.
15 seconds, and that is literal. It's very annoying.
Takes me about 6 months to read one book.
Oh my gosh. And so then the other thing too is all of these LED lights that are on everything, the alarm clocks, the, Alexas, everything that we have technologically that have those bright red, green, blue lights, cover those. And there you can do a search on Amazon. They actually have these dimmer stickers that go on the face of the clock, that go on over each of those things, where you can still see it a little bit, but it cuts down on 80% of that light. Because when you look at that light, that's telling your pineal gland it's time to stop secreting melatonin. If you get up in the middle of the night, don't turn the light on. Don't look at, like your toothbrush. It's got that flashing light that it's charging. I put a piece of duct tape over that so that doesn't wake me up in the middle of the night. Or, more, I'm obviously not sleepwalking, but you know what I mean. Okay.
That'd be fun. So back to the evening thing. So what we try to do here is, after we've done an evening walk or wrapping up our evening, we turn off bright lights. We just have lamps on. And we're normal people. We like to watch a little Netflix in the evening just to calm down. But we try to be done, X amount of time before we have to wrap it up for bed. And so the transition is very easy. And let me talk about one thing. This is really important. If you have a good enough meal at dinner that's high protein and high good fat, you're going to be full and you're not going to want to snack in the evening. If you want, let me show you right now, or give you right now, a surefire recipe to have heartburn and to not sleep very well. Okay? Have a high...
Not that you've had this from experience.
No, I haven't. I'm just saying I'm being facetious, obviously, but this is what a lot of America does, and a lot of Canada too, and I'm sure many other places in the world. If you have a high carb dinner, okay, you have a bunch of pasta, okay, and very little fat, very little protein, your insulin is going to spike, and then you're not going to be satiated, and then within an hour to 2 hours, you're going to start getting the nibbles, and you're going to want a snack. So you're going to go to the cupboard, and you're not going to go, I'm going to have some steak right now. What you're going to do is you're going to go to the cupboard, and you're going to get some crackers, some chips, some cookies, whatever, more high sugary snacks, and you're going to eat that. Now here's the rub on that. We need the lights out so melatonin can be secreted, like Shannon said. Melatonin helps us sleep. When you eat food, there are these little pumps in your stomach called the proton pumps, and the proton pumps secrete hydrochloric acid. So let's say this is your stomach, okay? You've got these little pumps down here, and they secrete this liquid called hydrochloric acid. It shoots out of the pumps, and that's what breaks down your food. When you have melatonin that is secreted, and your body's starting to wind down, starting to get sleepy, and you're like, I'm going to have some chips, and you eat a bunch of chips, well, guess what happens? That melatonin has an inhibitory effect on the proton pumps. So the melatonin tells the proton pumps not to pump out any hydrochloric acid. So you eat the chips. Now the chips sit in your stomach and they don't digest. So guess what happens? You get heartburn. So a lot of people will say, oh, I got heartburn, and now I have to sleep up, right? Because it splashes up into my esophagus, and I have to sleep upright. Now I sleep upright, and I got a headache, and I don't sleep well. Well, have a good fat meal, have a high protein meal, don't snack in the evening, and that's going to mitigate all of your heartburn, and you're going to sleep well. And again, this is one of nature's amazing ways to know that, back in the day when we were hunter-gatherers, we didn't have a pantry or a fridge to go into to pull out a bag of chips. We ate our last meal of the day, usually high protein, high fat. We weren't hungry because, the window of time from dinner to the sun going down and the fire running out was not very long, and then we fell asleep. So I'm pretty sure hunter-gatherers didn't have heartburn. Right?
Well, and so it actually, the proton pump, it secretes 3 different types of acid to digest our food. And the thing that everybody needs to understand is the goal is to allow 3 hours for, and this is the reason why. I always say, I don't want to just tell everybody what to do. I want to tell them what their body is trying to do to help them. Your body needs to go through that digestive process, which includes insulin and everything else, to get everything where it needs to be so that it can have the melatonin that's working to ready yourself for the restorative phase. We are very meticulous. That's what I love about the human body. It's very meticulous.
What are the other 2 things?
Acetyl-CoA and gastrin.
Gotcha. Smarty pants.
Okay, so that's sleep hygiene in a nutshell.
Okay, what about temperature? You forgot about that.
That's right. So what I was going to say is the temperature of your room is so important. When I mentioned that the reason why we wake up, it's typically because we're hot or, cold. It's a temperature issue, or we've been, woken up by a child or an animal, or we're sweating, or, that type of thing. So they say that the best temperature to sleep at is 68 degrees. Mm-hmm. So if you turn your thermostat to a certain level, I think we put ours at 71, and then we have a fan going above us at all times.
Which brings it down to about 68.
That's right. The other thing too is utilize things like blacking out your blackout curtains so that it's super dark. If you have a street light that's right outside your window and it's really bright in your room, again, that pineal gland is not going to be able to do what it needs to the full extent. You can use the eye covers if you need to, earplugs, noise machines, like they call them sleep machines, or a fan that,
some sort of white
makes
noise.
Like a white noise.
If you're a light sleeper like you,
yeah,
with white noise going on, we have a fan going on the floor, and if there's a typical home noise, air conditioner kicks on, or you hear a door, the fan noise is going to drown that out.
That's right.
And we've been doing that for years, and I used to stress out because if I traveled and I didn't have a fan, it would be hard for me to sleep. But last time I went home to Canada, my mother had this little mini kind of sleep mate. It was awesome, and I ended up buying one on Amazon, and maybe we can put it in the show notes. It was $30 or something. You've got to charge it, but it charges for 32 hours, I think, so you get several nights of sleep out of it. And you can set the settings. You can have it sound like a fan. You can have it sound like the ocean or rain. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's super small, super
and
convenient.
it can make a huge difference when you're traveling and at home,
100%.
et cetera. And then the other thing is making sure you have a comfortable mattress so that you're not waking up in pain. Mm-hmm. Sheets make a big difference on whether, I really believe in 100% cotton because that particular material breathes so that you don't sweat. It helps regulate your temperature a little better. And, when we talk about foods that actually cause sleepiness, did you ever hear of your grandmother saying, drink a warm glass of milk?
Yeah.
Do you know why that is?
Yeah, because of the tryptophan.
That's right.
Yeah.
So do you know which foods are highest in tryptophan?
Turkey.
So meat, eggs,
Tryptophan's
milk.
an amino acid, and when you drink warm milk, tryptophan...
Doesn't have to be warm.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think that's just a tradition, though. Yeah, but tryptophan is one of the amino acids, which is the broken down form of protein. and it triggers serotonin, I believe, or is it No, it's serotonin, I think, right?
I actually don't know what it triggers. I just know the foods that are high in
tryptophan does something. We should know this. Sorry. Tryptophan triggers something in the brain that actually helps you sleep.
Okay.
It's like it's a relaxing.
Magnesium is the other one.
So that's another thing that is huge. Shannon recommended magnesium to me years ago, and I've never had a sleep problem. But man, when I take magnesium, I sleep. I've always slept like Dracula, but I sleep more like the dead when I take magnesium. It's noticeable.
And why that is because, magnesium has a lot of different purposes in our body, but one of them is to relax muscle. And if anybody ever complains about what they perceive as restless legs, or that they just, they feel like they have to move, anyone who has ever been like that I recommended that they take magnesium at bedtime.
It clears up super quick.
It clears that up almost immediately. So tryptophan and magnesium are two things that you can, and I recommend the magnesium to be taken right at bed. Magnesium glycinate is one of the best absorbable types of magnesium. However, there is a brand called Magnesium Breakthrough that I am a big fan of because it's 7 different types of magnesium, and I think that just works synergistically with all the different jobs that magnesium has in your body.
Yeah.
But that's definitely one of the things that I recommend my patients do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much low-hanging fruit, and are we going to put all this in a list so people can have it?
Well, let's hack stack it for a second. Like, what would be your top 3 things that somebody could do to ensure on your end of it from the outside? And sorry, we are having a huge storm right now.
Is that going to affect audio? Like, will you hear that? Yeah. Okay.
What do you do about it?
Yeah. Sorry about the rumbling. We're having a huge thunderstorm right now. But before you go into the hack stacks, I want to mention one thing. People ask me all the time, what position should I sleep in? And it's a good question. I always say, if you are sleeping really well and you're not waking up in a ton of pain, don't change what you're doing. Sleep how you're sleeping. If you're uncomfortable sleeping, you want to sleep with the natural shape of the body. Okay, so if you're a side sleeper like I am, I tend to sleep either right side or left side. My pillow is stacked up so it supports my neck, and then it keeps me here. You don't want too much pillow. If I had 2 or 3 pillows stacked and I was this way, it would be like me walking around all day like this. I'm going to strain my neck. If I have too little of a pillow and my head's dropping in here, I'm going to strain this side of my neck. So it just should be comfortable right here. Sleeping directly on your shoulder can compress the joint a little bit. So bring your bicep and tricep ahead of your rib cage and try to sleep like that. Generally pretty comfortable. I like to hug a little mini pillow. It's very comfortable. Okay. If you sleep on your back, same thing. You don't want to have so much pillow or too little pillow that you're tipped back. You don't want to have so much pillow that you're tipped forward. Okay. You just want to have the normal shapes of your back being conformed to. So as you sleep on your mattress, if you have a really hard mattress and this is your lower back, that mattress is not going to come up and meet your lower back. If you have a softer mattress, it will. So if you have a hard mattress and your back hurts and you like to sleep on your back, you can get something called a Mackenzie sleep belt. You can get them on Amazon for $15-20, and it's just this little soft tube, and we have one for you.
One or the other of us, I feel like, is using it for one reason or another.
Well, we got it for you when you hurt your back really badly a few years ago. And so it's like a ring, you wrap it around, and if you're on your side or your back, it just supports your spine. But basically, if you're laying on your back, something to support your lower back and something to support your neck, you're good to go. But generally, you just want to stay out of extreme positions, okay? Like people who maybe sleep on their stomach like this with this arm out here, they're flat down on the pillow. If you're not going to be comfortable like this for 4 hours during the day, you're probably not going to feel pretty good when you wake up like this, okay? So if you wake up and you're in a funky position, recalibrate and come down to this position. Your kids are going to sleep in all sorts of funky positions because they're like little pieces of rubber. They're never going to wake up sore. We're not so much rubber anymore. So sleep in a way sleep in a way that you can sleep and is most ergonomic to you.
Okay.
Okay, hack stack it.
Yep, you go. What are your
Okay.
top three?
Top three are stretch before you go to bed. Okay, not a lot. I'm not saying do another round of exercise. I'm talking pick 2 or 3 body parts that are really kind of your kind of problem spots. For me, it's tightness in my lower back and hips and middle back. So I roll on my mini foam roller. I do a move. We have a little bench on the end of our bed. I do a thoracic extension move. I do some standing extensions, and then I sit on the bed and I do a pigeon on each side. Takes 2 to 3 minutes. Hop in bed. That's number one. Number two, I think one of the most important things I've done for my sleep is to actually not read like self-help books and, I'm a
Or journal.
but I'm a sucker for information. So I used to literally read like journal stuff to learn before I was going to bed. And you were the one who's like, you got to read fiction. You got to shut off your brain. And I started doing that. That's number two. And number three is the light thing. Start dimming the lights way before you go to bed. Don't have all your kitchen lights on and don't sit super close to your TV. Have a couple of lamps on. Shut that TV off a minimum of an hour and a half before you go to bed. Okay? Those are my big three. And then may I make it the big four? Don't eat within 3 hours of bedtime. If you have to have a late dinner because of work, make that an exception. But I will tell you, my best night's sleep, which are kind of almost all night, every night, pisses her off. But when I go to bed and I'm not full, I sleep amazing.
You can't be hungry either. So, there is a balance there, which is why you're talking about make sure you properly balance your dinner meal so that and you recently said to me, since I kind of changed up the way that you're eating, it definitely started to minimize your looking for snacks throughout the evening. But you get hungry quite easily. It's very hard to fill you up. So you used to, an hour after we'd have dinner, would start looking for
my stomach
something.
would actually be growling, and I'd be looking for a protein shake or a protein bar. I was eating healthy stuff, but since we changed up and started adding more avocado to my meals and some of the other healthier fats, I'm full until the next morning. Like, I don't ever wake up in the middle of the night hungry. I'm not hungry in the evening, so that's made a huge difference.
Yeah. Okay.
What are yours?
Mine are definitely getting outdoors in the morning, a 10-minute walk when the sun is rising, a 10-minute walk at lunchtime, a 10-minute walk as the sun is setting. I think that circadian rhythm really rules the roost when it comes. We can do a lot of things to screw it up, but that is pretty foundational in helping to keep that good. You got to go to bed and wake at the same time, and that includes weekends. And that's hard for people because a lot of times people will sleep in on the weekends and get up super early. I would say, maybe sleep an hour extra to maybe a max on the weekends, but definitely don't drastically change, that. So that would be one. Number two would be to that process of having a system that you follow where your brain kicks in that, this is what he or she does when it's time to get ready to sleep. You go back to your bathroom. You shut your phone down for the evening. You brush your teeth. The lights are dim. You don't have any more electronics after that. I think that whole process is kind of much like what we did with our kids when they were babies, when we were doing some sleep training. The process that we went through that was repetitive, it signaled to them that it was time for sleep, the same with our body.
Right, yeah.
So that would be number two. Three, and I'm going to say this because I feel like there's a lot of people who resist sleeping or reading at bedtime. And I would say you don't love reading.
Not really.
I love reading, so this isn't a hard one for me. But even if you hate reading, find something that is enjoyable, interesting, but not stimulating. I promise you it will help take your brain off of what's going on and help you fall asleep easier.
Okay, so there's your hack stacks. 3 from me, 3 from Shannon. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I did want to talk a little bit because I mentioned the GBNO community and I wanted to let everybody know what that is and what's coming. So basically, we are creating this community that is an online place that all of the stuff that we do is housed in one area, one place that people go. And then there's different tabs for the various things. We are making this very affordable for everybody so that they have access. Everybody has access to getting good health information to help them get better, not older. So this is what we are doing to help that be more affordable. There's going to be really great things on this community, and that's why I mentioned that the sleep hygiene document would be housed there. So there's going to be tabs. One will be the community, where we have an opportunity to correspond with each other. The next is going to be a classroom where we will teach classes from time to time, and that will be where those take place. There's tabs for question and answer. So we're going to have where you can ask us questions and we will film ourselves giving you answers. Every week we will do one of those. We're doing our table talks, which is where we're kind of just touching in on stuff that we typically what you and I do every night is we talk about something cool that happened in our day, patient-wise, or a cool study that we learned about, some great data, etc. We're going to just film ourselves talking about that once a week, and those will all be there. I'm going to be in the grocery store showing my favorite products, and we're going to be adding that there. And then there's going to be a tab for like nutrition resources. That's where the sleep hygiene document will be, along with other documents. You're going to have ones that are related to your outside in. So it's going to be a great place for everybody who is interested in getting better, not older, that community, to go to find everything we're doing. All of our podcasts will be listed there, easy to find. So that is coming real soon.
All right, so there you go. All things on the Hey Dr. Rob and Hey Shannon Jones Get Better Not Older community. Wrapping up the podcast now, which was episode 7, all about sleep. So hopefully you get great information out of this. Share it with everybody you know, because anybody who's in our age range, over 50, over 40, this is pertinent information that if you want to live better and have a good health span, not just a lifespan, this is super important for you. So from Dr. Rob Jones and the outside in, and
from Shannon Jones, the inside out.
Get better, not older.